So I had some time to think about this. Watch some reactions, listen to some constructive criticism and not so constructive criticism, but I wanted to take my time to put my thoughts together on what JaGUar just showed off. Because it's a lot. I mean, they killed off their entire brand, their heritage, for a big "I hope this works" push. From deleting all their social media posts and showing off a wild teaser video to finally showcasing the Type-00, which is also electric and will only be electric, everyone lost their ever-loving mind when they saw everything. The logo, the car design, and the chief creative officer's talk. But is it actually a bad design? So this is going to be a short one because the cars aren't released. We haven't seen a full lineup, and this is just kind of the reveal, but 2 weeks ago, JaGUar released a teaser video that was very divisive. I don't think anyone liked it, or at the very least, were very confused. This 30-second video was high concept, didn't show off the cars, and had a design concept that looked straight out of The Fifth Element, which is a great movie you should all watch right after this. I'll put a link below where you can watch it or buy it, but outside of the "this is woke" dribble, I can see why people were confused and maybe a bit upset. For one, they seem to be deleting their heritage, their brand, and their loyal customer base. A small loyal customer base, but a customer base that purchases JaGUars. And while the cars were never cheap, they were approachable, especially in the second-hand market. But now, at what they're saying of a 100K base, they're even priced out of JaGUar owners. But let's get to the design of everything.
Roller coaster. Roller coaster ride, hands up in the sky, take you for a ride, love to feel the high, we can start again, laughing to the end, screaming at the top, hope it never stops, we can do it all over, twin is bringing us closer.
The first ad seemed to be a way for JaGUar to get everyone's attention, posting as it were, but it confused a lot of people. There's an expectation when it comes to a brand. In design, we design for the brand and what the brand represents. JaGUar represents a heritage and a proud heritage of British engineering and design. Even though JaGUar hasn't been British since the 2000s, that design language, that iconography, never left JaGUar. But this new marketing push completely stripped that heritage away. It's like saying Coca-Cola will be a water brand and only a water brand now, and show off bodybuilders lifting, sweating, and drinking water. If you were a Coke drinker, you'd be a little confused, right? The ad was high concept with a lot of buzzwords and actually pretty generic people if you think about it. They looked pissed to even be in a JaGUar commercial. It was bright in colors, a lot of chaos on screen. It didn't tell a story, it just said a lot of things that didn't represent JaGUar or the people who bought JaGUars. And if this was just to get their attention, it did work. I mean, if you look at Google search terms, JaGUar was not a highly sought after brand. It was not a trending brand. So if you wanted to show off an only electric line of vehicles, this was a sure way of getting everyone's attention. It wasn't until the 2nd of December did we get an answer to what this car is going to be. Although we've seen a mule spy shot of what people are guessing is the actual car, what we saw was still a concept vehicle. So let's start off with the branding, and I wanted to bring in another car company, Rolls-Royce, because they recently did something similar but in a, we'll say, different direction. I believe the whole idea is to update their brand to a new market. Like I said, they're not very popular, and if you look at this chart, these cars haven't been selling great. I think the people that buy Jags are either dying off or moving on to other car companies that are a bit more lively. And I believe that was the case with the Rolls-Royce crowd. Rolls wanted to be a lifestyle brand while also shifting their cars to a younger but still wealthy market. But Rolls-Royce utilized a famous design and marketing house called Pentagram. JaGUar used their own in-house design team. This guy right here, who is the chief creative officer and has worked on very iconic vehicles for his time within JLR. He heads the design studio for Jaguar, but also worked with Chrysler as a senior designer, worked for MG and designed the MG XEE concept and the MG F sports car. He then freelanced for Land Rover and led a team that designed the third generation Range Rover. He later worked with Ford to rejuvenate the Lincoln Mercury cars in 1999, which RIP Mercury, that didn't go too well I guess. He was part of the team that designed the LRX concept and guided the evolution of the 2010 Range Rover Sport and Discovery, and designed the fourth generation of Range Rovers and second generation of Range Rover Sports, with the latest design being the 2020 Defender, which is kind of an homage to the original Land Rover Defender, so he's got some experience with cars, SUVs, and heritage vehicles. But just because you're a great car designer doesn't mean you're a great brand designer. I'll parallel this to Johnny Ives. Hear me out. Johnny Ive had designed some beautiful hardware. He is a great industrial designer. He brought us some of the most iconic products we've ever seen. However, when he was tasked with, I believe, creating iOS 7, it was a drastic change from iOS 6, and almost as drastic as this first video. People did not like it, and it was a bit confusing. Text weight was all over the place, the use of color was confusing, buttons and navigation paths were hard to follow. Eventually he got there, but user interface is not his strong point. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but a lot of people outside the design world think an industrial designer can be a fashion designer or a UI designer, and that's not always the case. There's a new kitten. But going back to Jared, I do think the car looks fine. There are some details we'll talk about, but I want to talk about the brand identity first.
Won't disrespect, so I disregard fools. All of them be facades. And they still in the streets and they're writing statements. Oh my lord, there's rats at large. I copped it soft, but I turned it hard. Like how your girl gets me after dark. None of my peers got applied, no pressure. VIO, then I'm on that bar. Disrespect, so I disregard fools. All of them be facades. And they still in the streets and they're writing statements. Oh my lord, there's rats at large.
Where Rolls-Royce embraced their heritage, evolved their branding, and redesigned it to fit the newer market while paying homage to the legacy, Jaguar abandoned it 100%. The original Jaguar logo was strong, and I would say the 2001 to 2012 logo was their best branding for word mark, and the 2021 to 2024 Leaper as their best pictorial mark. It's strong, it's distinctive, and it has a legacy. The new logo is meant to be just a word mark, harking back to its older logo from 1951 to 1957. I also don't really get the upper and lower case other than for the aesthetic look, although it could be a play on the way you pronounce it. British people have a very distinct way of saying Jaguar, and if you sound it out based on the capital letters, Jaguar, it kinda sounds like how they say it. I don't know if that might be a stretch, but what else is it for? Okay, as someone who has designed logos, the harsh reality is a logo doesn't define a brand. The brand defines the brand, but a logo still should have some kind of meaning. This doesn't, at least right now. The one thing I do like about the logo is that the J and R are the same letters, just reversed and flipped. This makes the jewel actually kind of interesting, and I like that it's in the hub of the wheel. I will say the original jewel was getting a bit old, a bit too busy, and there was too many variations of the branding. This does condense the branding, and let's not forget, Jaguar had a lot of different logos before we got to the Leaper, so it's not like this is new to them. We just don't remember it because we weren't born then. Everyone is going to hate a brand redesign, usually because we hate when something we grew up with or are familiar with changes, especially when it changes drastically. Remember when Gap tried to redesign their logo and it got so much hate they went back to the old logo? And while in extreme cases a logo can sell a brand, most redesigns don't merit that much hate, at least on a design level. It's mostly just nostalgia that makes us feel something. And as I was alluding to, Jaguar's brand was getting old, it was getting stale. A rebrand sometimes is a good idea. For instance, the Bell logo designed by Saul Bass was an actual bell. It was looking very old, it didn't represent the times, the technology, or what the company was turning into, so they redesigned it. And a lot of us remember this logo, not this one. So I think this is just Jaguar doing the same thing. I think the Hyundai logo is pretty bad, the Jeep branding is uninspiring, and Nissan is just text with a shape behind it. But if any of them changed it, we might automatically hate it. Now, look at something like Bentley or BMW's rebrand, or Mercedes, or even Maserati and Aston Martin. They all try to portray luxury. Well, maybe not the new BMW logo. I'm sorry, that looks worse than the Jaguar logo. You can't fight me on this. It looks really bad. But anyway, people have said the new logo looks like a perfume brand. But I don't know if you've seen luxury car logos recently and perfume logos. They all kind of intertwine with each other. Mercedes, Rolls-Royce, and Ferrari all kind of have become a consumer goods company, a lifestyle brand that sells high-end clothing, bags, jewelry, and yes, scents. They're trying to create new loyal customers through brand recognition, and they know consumerism is a sure shot at that. Like Rolls-Royce has clearly stated, the Spirit of Ecstasy redesign looks better on products. Porsche is selling products. Mercedes has a store inside their own showrooms where you can buy shirts, glasses, and bags. They understand most people can't afford their vehicle, so they're selling their brand name on overpriced shirts and bags. I mean, there was a Porsche design store in JFK Airport. I think the biggest strategy with the rebrand is the Leaper. The 2021 to 2024 Leaper was perfect. Called the strike-through, it's way too busy, and even showing it on a car, you can barely tell to JaGUar inside those lines. The strike-through was meant to convey a strike-through conventional thoughts, or ideologies. So I'm taking it he thinks the old JaGUar was too conventional, which maybe it was, but this is not the way to pay homage to the original brand. The J and R is supposed to be a monogram, a seal of approval, but that doesn't mean anything when it's a new logo and you're just putting it on your cars. I mean, it is interesting that they say copy nothing, but the logo's minimalistic thin font is literally what everyone has been doing for years now. Like, it looks like all the other logos, right? But again, if you compare the Leaper with the Spirit of Ecstasy redesign, Pentagram did it correctly. They took the essence of the Spirit of Ecstasy and refined it, modernized it, and it was designed with purpose. They said in the modern age, in the digital age, the icon needed to be versatile for modern products. Like the internet, like a handbag. The Leaper goes the exact opposite, introducing busyness and less freedom to place the icon on items. Like, look when I shrink it down. Compared to the Spirit of Ecstasy, you lose the design. There's also so much dead space. I like to get a hold of their design standard book to see what is allowed with this and what's not, because if you can't cut the strike-throughs, you're wasting all that negative space. If you put it on something round, for instance, and even though the JR is round, it's not as iconic as the Leaper. Now, I'm not going to try to redesign the logo or the word mark. Something like that is going to take more than a day or week, and anyone who has redesigned JaGUar's logo hasn't really had time to think about it. I know they're doing it for the algorithm, but any self-respecting designer would at least give it a week or two to concept, revise, and design to create an actual logo. And as he said, this took a few years to come to fruition, which checks out. I'm sure the rebrand went through multiple revisions, product testing, placement testing, approvals, and again, many revisions. So when someone is spending an evening and an afternoon showing off a redesign, it's a bit disrespectful to the designer's work. But let's talk about the color, because right from the first video, they used high contrast, bright colors with some pastels, and it turns out those are the new colors of the concept cars. In their video, they mention chiaroscuro, which is the use of strong contrast between light and dark. Popularized in the Renaissance era, it's bold, it's contrasty, it's used to give a sense of volume. When the cars are revealed, they call the colors London Blue and Miami Pink, which is pretty much all the explanation we got for both car colors. No heritage to the British green at all here, which was a big mistake. But the best that I can tell is why they call it the Miami Pink was because they were in Miami during Art Week. He starts off by talking about very specific creators like David Bowie, who has been very striking in music and fashion, Vivienne Westwood, who showcases very striking fashion designs, and the architect Richard Rogers, who utilizes color and shapes to create some of the most striking buildings such as the Lloyd Building. He's trying to compare himself and the cars to their work, I'm assuming. And I will say, the car is not ugly, and I can't stress this enough, it's just a concept. Concept cars usually don't go into production, and when they do, they usually don't look 100% like the original idea because of why, people? That's right, regulations. I did a video right here about that, and if we're to believe this photo is the production car, you can spot a lot of differences here. Usually the concept cars, they're almost never the car you're going to get. Like I said, regulations will make sure of this. Look at the original Cybertruck compared to the production model, and I'm pretty sure those brake lights won't pass any regulations in the States. A concept car usually is an amalgamation of ideas that will go into other cars, so I'm guessing that interior is probably not going to be the actual car. Though I could be wrong, you never know, but if I'm right, you bet your ass I'm making a follow-up video. And I know what he said, this is the car. It's not the car. The car features butterfly doors, a center 3.2mm long brass spine, splits front seats, and the dash, which has twin revolving screens. The material is made out of brass, travertine stone, and textiles. This sounds like a high-end store fit-out rather than an interior of a car. And I have no idea how heavy travertine stone is, but in what I'm assuming will be an already heavy car, that promise of 430 miles of range is pretty bold. But the wheel fitment is spot on. The wide fender flares and the low profile of the car gives it a hot rod inspired look with a very mean stance. It looks something out of Blade Runner or Cyberpunk. The front end, which I've noticed some EV car designers have a hard time of creating, is sleek but not boring. I mean, I've already made comments on social media how this looks almost exactly like the Batmobile from the Batman animated series. This car is very Art Deco inspired. The simple, sharp lines with subtle curves, the dramatic hood length, and short cab give it an elegant look unlike a lot of cars on the market today. Well, until you look a little closer. The Soleil concept from Cadillac, the Celestiq, which I think looks worse than the Type-00, but you also have the Rolls-Royce Spectre or the 2007 Chrysler Crossfire. They all kind of share the same shape. Lines are a big part of the design language. The interesting thing to me is, why is the hood so long? Is it storage? Are they filling that up with batteries? He did say he made the bonnet that length because he could. He didn't want it to look like a traditional EV car, which, fair enough. I think the second complaint most people have about EVs, other than the no vroom vroom, is the oddly shaped design. And let's talk about the back. We've seen it close, but I'm not sure if that's actually a trunk. And if it is a trunk, you have to lift pretty high to get anything in there. It's not a traditional hatch where it opens from the bumper, it's basically a bucket. The oddest thing about this design is the prism case that sits on the side of the fender. It contains 3 totems of natural materials, brass, travertine, and alabaster that you place inside the center console to tailor the interior? I have no idea how that works, why it's a thing, and if it will be a thing in the production car, but I mean, Mercedes has the ambient light and Rolls-Royce has the starry night, so why not? And let's not forget the camera rear view mirrors, which are so low to the ground, I have no idea if they're actually useful. But again, I'm pretty sure in the US, you need side view mirrors. He did say the car is influenced by the desire to recapture the original conviction of the brand. And the Type-00 is very reminiscent of the E-Type, supposedly. And I will say a lot of car companies are doing the same. The new Mustang is reminiscent of the 1972 Mustang Mach 1 or Boss 351. Its design is far from a carbon copy of it, but you can see the inspiration. The E-Type was revered when it came out, not only from car enthusiasts, but also other car manufacturers like Enzo Ferrari. Now that design is timeless, and only time will tell if the Type-00, a concept car that is probably going to change a lot, will do the same. In an interview with Acco Drive, he said they needed to stand for something and not please everybody, and in the design world, I get that. I mean, designing by committee is a death sentence for good design. If you make a product that fits for everybody, then no one will like it and it'll be bland. I mean, look at Jaguar when Ford purchased it. Those cars kind of look bland. He said if you listen to the customers too much, you go out of business. It's about getting the right balance, which he's not wrong. It's the same thing about designing from committee. You do what everyone wants, no one will be 100% happy. But then he said the brand isn't tailored to the customer, it's about tailoring the brand to the brand, which, what? So the Jaguar Type-00 concept, it's a concept. It looks fine. The branding is the branding. It seems like Jaguar was about to completely fail, and this seems like a last-ditch effort. Go hard or go home, and they went pretty hard. But I'd like to hear what you think in the comments below on the brand, the redesign, our good friend Jerry here. Jerry or Gary? Whatever. The guy who redesigned everything, the price hike, and this is actually going to be the final look of the car. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.
Hands up in the sky.